Would everyone please rise? Did you notice I had to hit that bell really hard? There's a lot of good energy in this room today. Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of Seattle Rotary number 4, named for being the 4th oldest club in the world and also one of the largest. I'm Beth Knox, your club president. As we convene today, we respectfully acknowledge that we do so on unceded Coast Salish land, specifically the ancestral land of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot tribes. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land we are on. We acknowledge and pay respect to the first peoples who gathered here, to elders past and present, and to all Indigenous people. Last Friday, longtime Rotary member Rex Clark passed away at age 96. Could we please have a moment of silence for Rex? All right, today kicks off Women's History Month, an annual declared month that first occurred in 1981 and highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. It is celebrated during March in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, corresponding with International Women's Day on March 8th. Our Prince of Programs, Ken Grant, has he's got his own fan section. Oh, it's him. He has scheduled 4 highly influential women for our meetings this month, from baseball to boardroom leadership to stories of generational Seattle family legacies. We've got some really powerful programs ahead. So be sure to make time for each of these amazing programs this month. Now, here at Seattle 4 Rotary, we enjoy music and words of inspiration to kick off our meeting. Leading our music today is Bill Center and Don Murphy. Following the music, I invite Marcia Matusi to share our inspiration for the day. Bill.
Look at this young guy just leaping up there. All righty. Well, we are so glad and we're so honored to have Catie Griggs with us today. I wanted to tell you, last September, I was on a nonstop flight from Raleigh, North Carolina to Seattle, coming home from a visit with my friends there. And there was
Bill always has a story to start.
Yeah, very nice young person sitting next to me, and we started a conversation, and I found that she was an executive working in Seattle. Fortunately, I was wearing my Mariners gear, and Mariners were on a good run, and we were talking about Mariners, but it still took me 20 minutes to pry out of her that she is the new president of business operations for the Mariners, and we're proud to have her today. So in honor of Catie, we are not only going to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game, but Don Murphy and I are going to do a special introduction to the song. Many of you may not know that Take Me Out to the Ball Game is actually a verse to a longer song.
The refrain.
The refrain to the longer song. And the longer song is about Catie Maestro. Catie was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad, just to root for the home team crew every Sioux. Catie knew one Saturday, her young beau called to see if she'd like to go to see a show.
But Catie said,
no.
I'll tell you what you can do. Oh,
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Oh, it's root for the Mariners. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1,
2,
3
3
strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Hey.
Play ball! Please be seated. Please be seated.
Good afternoon. I am Marsha Mutisi. I am co-chair or chair of the Rotary Cares Committee. That's one hat I wear. I'm also a big music fan. So my invocations are always of a musical nature. So today's invocation is lyrics I've chosen from a family group they of the reggae genre from Jamaica. The Morgan Heritage is the family band that is a big musical family. So there's one song done by a family member called Gramps Morgan, and he talks about certain types of people. And I really think he was talking about Rotarians. So he talks about people who give a little more than they take. And they try to fix more than they break. They're the kind who take the time to help a stranger in the rain. And the song is called People Like You. People that stand up for those down on their knees. They lend a voice to those who cannot speak. They shine a light and give sight to the ones who've lost their way, people like you. They walk around with their hearts on their sleeves, and they try to be the change that they want to see. If you lay down your life, they lay down their life for love, so someone can be saved. People like you. Keep doing what you do. Let God's Rotarians say amen. Thank you.
Bill, Don, and Marcia, thank you for setting the tone for our meeting today. I also thank you to Matt Albertson and Ken Colling for serving as our greeters, and to Eric Corning for serving as our Zoom meeting host, and our meeting reporter today, Pete Delane. We have several guests that I would like to introduce, and as I call your name, if you could stand and we will recognize all of you. Jiyun Mastro Giovanni from the Washington Athletic Club, Catie Takahashi from the Washington Athletic Club, Julian Lombardi, Tom Lewis, guest and dad of Tiffany Lewis, Jenny McCloskey, Mercer Island Rotary Club, guest of Jan Levy, Dilip Sivam, guest of Eric, Bob Wiley, longtime member whose home is now in Durham, North Carolina. We're glad to have you back, Bob. Now you have a round of applause. All right. For 2 weeks now, I've been promising that you're going to hear directly from our club's new director, and today's the day. So please welcome Seattle Rotary's new club director, Mary Goldie.
Thank you, President Beth. And I thought you'd like to see this picture of me in my high school Interact Club. I was the vice president. We did nothing. So that I'd like to say I have a long relationship with Rotary, but it's kind of symbolic. It wasn't really much of anything back at the time, but just so y'all would know, I've got some cred. But joking aside, in your months as membership manager, I've been amazed at the variety of causes and organizations that you support. And I'm continue to be impressed by how long some of y'all have been members to this club. I hear stories each week about unforgettable speakers, crazy event setups for 1,000+ attendee events, and the most notable Seattleites you've ever counted were once members. This rich club history has remained front of mind and an inspiration to me as I've worked to envision a future for our club. So how do we get our club back to what it once was, while also making it more appealing to younger professionals who have different interests and priorities than the past? For example, the Issaquah Rotary Club has 2 lunch meetings a month and 2 evening meetings. Since making this cadence change, they've seen an increase in YRLs joining the club, and they've had better meeting attendance. So while 2 meetings a month in the evening might not work for our club, would it hurt to trial an evening meeting and see how it goes? So one of my priorities as club director is to being open to trying new things, taking them on when they work and pivoting when they don't. Our club's always been known for its weekly meetings, but they're a little over-programmed right now. So I'm hoping to reduce the programming in our meetings, giving people at the podium more time to speak so things don't feel rushed. It may take some time to make those changes, but when it comes to meetings, it's time to work smarter and not harder. And in addition to reimagining our weekly meetings, I'd also like to see membership gain a better understanding of our club's charitable arm, the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation, or SRSF. SRSF is our club's own foundation responsible for allocating $250,000 a year to numerous notable causes. I'm actively working with SRSF to bring them in closer to the club fold. So, they should be part of the club. They're made up of members of the club. We should be united in our efforts together. Visibility in our downtown corridor is another important initiative I'm taking on as club director. And as we attend professional events and service projects downtown, we need to be talking to people about Rotary and the work that we're doing in the community. The more people that see us as Rotarians actively participating in downtown affairs, the more appealing our club will become to professionals and other corporate entities who share our ideals and interests. And I know that our participation in events downtown will help us increase our membership numbers. I have many more ideas, but for the sake of time, I'll just leave it there. And just know that, I have some big ideas, and, in order for me to be able to implement these big ideas, I need your help. If you need, a meeting link, if you have a request or something, maybe ask a member first. The more administrative tasks that can be, taken care of by the club internally will free up a lot of time for me to be able to work on these initiatives. So this is an exciting time to be a Seattle 4 Rotarian. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to serve the club in this capacity, and I thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mary. We're so excited to have you in this role. I also want to thank Karma McKay, who's joining us online today, for stepping in as the interim meeting director during these past few months. Her experience and love for Seattle 4 members is truly a gift. Next up, we will have club member Joe Phillips introduce new member Jared Gross, after which club member John Steckler will share a member spotlight of member Jan Levy. I don't know if you noticed the 4 J's there. If I screw them all up, you'll know why. Joe, please.
All right, thank you, President Beth. Today, it's my honor to introduce our newest member, Jared Gross. Jared currently serves as VP of Business Development for Juniper Capital, which provides private commercial real estate funding. His classification is investments, and his membership has been sponsored by John King and Jeff Pyatt. Jared is a Seattle native, and after graduating from Roosevelt High School, he attended the University of Wisconsin, right?
Did you hear that?
Where he graduated with a degree in communications and a real estate license. He returned to Seattle and worked in residential real estate for 7 years, and then in 2018, he switched to commercial real estate when he took a position with WeWork in their Seattle office. Jared was promoted to leasing director for the Seattle market, then leasing director for both Bellevue and Portland, where despite the pandemic, which was not kind to companies like WeWork at that time, as you may recall, he led significant occupancy increases across all his markets. This past August, Jared assumed his current position at Juniper, where he works to expand the firm's customer base. Outside of work, Jared's priorities are his extended family, parents, siblings, grandparents, and golf. Jared has always been interested in sports, but he took up golf only 8 years ago. and his game has progressed so rapidly that he serves as a golf course rating panelist for Golf Week magazine. Jared has already jumped into Rotary with 2 feet, joining the Rotary Boys and Girls Club Committee and volunteering in some of the activities supporting youth sports. So please join me in welcoming our newest member, Jared Gross.
Take a while. There we go. Still recuperating, folks. So if I move slow, that's why. How's everybody doing? You know, I got to say one thing. Next year will mark my 25th anniversary in this club, 25 years. And I got to tell you, having worked with Mary Goldie and know about her talent and her enthusiasm, I am even more excited about what she's going to accomplish in the next 25 years. We are truly blessed. We really are. You know, when I started doing these Rotary Spotlights, it's been about 3 years now, my goal has always been to spotlight more than just what the member did for their business career. I wanted you to get to know them more than just what they've done for a living. So, for example, our Seattle Spotlight Member of the Month for March 2023 is Jan Levy. Her classification, retired leadership. Now, you know, if I was to ask you, if you know who, do you know who Jan Levy is? So several of you would say, oh yeah, sure I do. She was the executive director of Leadership Tomorrow for almost 30 years. Yeah, true. If that's what you knew of Jan Levy, then you know about that much about Jan Levy. There's so much more to tell you. So let me shine the spotlight on Jan and tell you her story. Yeah. Jan is a local girl born at Providence Hospital on Capitol Hill, which is now part of Swedish. Here she is practicing just the right pose for her first driver's license photo. Okay. Her parents' names were Leon and Janet. Her father, Leon, was a very successful dentist who made his career all in Seattle. His patients loved him so much that many of them, when they would relocate, they'd fly back to Seattle just to visit their favorite dentist. Now, her mother, Janet, wow. She was an active volunteer and dedicated civil rights activist. She served as vice president of the Northwest region of the NAACP starting in 1948. Now, that's a very unusual role for a middle-class Caucasian woman at that time. Jan also has an older sister named Lee, and they were very close to each other from childhood all the way up into adulthood. Together, they grew up in the Madison Park neighborhood. Their home was a place where diversity was always present, something that Jan took granted at the time. Now, while her parents raised Jan and her sister as Jewish, remember, this is old Seattle. The Jewish community here was very small and very assimilated. And she went to Sunday school with fellow Seattle Rotarian Skip Calkins. And her Sunday school teacher was none other than Herb Bridge. It's important to note that being Jewish in Seattle in the 1950s, while nothing to be ashamed of, was not something you talked about. This is something that would affect Jan later in her life. Now, she attended Garfield High School. Looks like a record album, doesn't it? Garfield High School, where she was drawn into the active, artistic, and social side of school. She was one of 3 white cheerleaders on the cheering squad for her senior year, and she even had the pleasure of revisiting with her fellow cheerers years later at their 50th high school reunion, as you can see here. Now, it's important to note that when Jan went to Garfield, the white population was about 20%. The Black population was about 55%, and the Asian population was about 25%. So as a white Jewish person at Garfield, Jan knew what it felt like to be a minority during these very influential years of high school. Jan's priority in life was to become a professional dancer, even from this young age. This is what drove her. And after 1 year of college in Utah, Jan took off to New York to attend Adelphi University and study dance. Now, after a few years, she and a few other female dancers decided to move into an apartment in Manhattan. And for the next 2 years, Jan Levy worked as a professional dancer in New York. New York had a huge influence on Jan, to say the least. One night, she attended a party in Greenwich Village where she met a lot of people with Hebrew names. Now, Jan had never known any American kids with Hebrew names. These people were all sitting around smoking funny little cigarettes, listening to jazz, and talking about the Torah. This was the first time Jan was exposed to proud, informed members of the Jewish faith. That pride rubbed off on Jan. Oh, and she also met this really cute guy by the name of Paul, but I'll tell you a little more about him later. Now, after a couple of years, Jan decided she liked being behind the curtain more than being in front of it. But more than that and anything else, she wanted to stay in New York. So she had to get a job. She applied for a job as the assistant to the manager of a small rock and roll band. Turned out the manager was a fellow Seattleite and a fellow Jew. Jan said they spent most of the interview playing a game called Jewish Geography. That's where you all sit around and figure out who you're related to and who you know in common. And obviously, Jan charmed her way right into the job. And for the next 3 years, she traveled the world with this band called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It was an exciting life filled with discovery and a lot of misbehaving. Eventually, the band was going to relocate to LA, and Jan had no desire to head west. Instead, she decided to join her boyfriend, Paul, who's the guy she met at the Greenwich Village party, and follow him to Jerusalem as he finished his next year of school. Jerusalem is the home to 3 of the strongest modern-day powerhouse religions: Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths. And for the first time in her life, Jan was living in a place where being Jewish was in the majority and not the minority. After a year in Jerusalem, Jan followed Paul back to New York so he could finish school. And after school, Paul and Jan got married in a beautiful Orthodox Jewish wedding in Seattle. After the wedding, Paul wanted to go to graduate school in Boulder, Colorado, so together they moved to Boulder. Jan got a job as the administrative officer for the office of the chancellor for the university. Now, this was her first job that was not in the arts. And Jan loved it. You know why? She was working with people, she was solving problems, and she was actually good at it. And after 5 years in Boulder, Jan and Paul got divorced. Too young, too soon. Paul went back to New York, and Jan decided, you know what, I'm going to give Seattle another shot. So in 1979, Jan moved back to Seattle as an adult for the first time. She got a job as an office manager for a startup firm in law and urban planning. Here she learned bookkeeping and even became a paralegal. Now that lasted 3 years. And then she got a job as the administrative assistant to the CEO of a thriving savings and loan called Washington Mutual Savings Bank. She was quickly promoted to assistant vice president of student loans. With a staff of 13, she led WAMU to become the #1 lender of student loans in the state. And with that kind of success, she was promoted again, this time to assistant vice president of unsecured lines of credit. She hated it. Not solving problems, all negative interaction, and nothing to do with people, issues, and the outside world. Now, while she was working for the CEO, Jan became aware of a new program called Leadership Tomorrow. This was a civic leadership training program that targets mid to senior level managers in nonprofit, private, and public sectors. Those participants are trained to become the civic leaders for the region. And the parents of this program were the Seattle Chamber of Commerce and United Way of King County. Now, although housed in the chamber, it was a standalone 501c3. Jan herself went through the program and graduated in 1987. That same year, a young lady by the name of Ann Farrell, head of the Seattle Foundation and chair for the board of Leadership Tomorrow, sent a letter asking the alum if they could recommend anyone who'd be interested in the executive director position for Leadership Tomorrow. For Jan, the job was love at first sight. So she pursued it. And in 1989, she became the program's executive director, a position she held for almost 30 years until her retirement. Now, another perk of Leadership Tomorrow was that she got to meet a man there by the name of Bill Covington. Together, the two of them struck up a friendship that would last for 13 years until they started dating. And in 2020, they decided to move in together into a home in View Ridge. In 2013, Jan meets with Bob Rosner and Skip Calkins from the Seattle Rotary. They wanted to offer a special to all graduates of Leadership Tomorrow. They could get free dues for the first year, and they offered Jan the same deal. Of course, she had to say yes, and in February of 2013, Jan Levy joined the Seattle Rotary. Now, she served on numerous committees, loves the people she has met, and many, many of them have gone on to become good friends. Jan also loves being retired. Her goal is to get Bill to retire so they could travel more. Now, that being said, they are planning a trip to Paris and Bordeaux in September to celebrate Jan's 75th birthday. Wow. That's good to smile when you're 75. As you can see, Jan did not lead a linear life. Her mantra was, if you feed your soul and not your pocketbook, you will have a happy life. She's a lover of dance, theater, music, business leadership, and most of all, people. Fellow Rotarians, I give you our Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month for March 2023, Jan Levy, classification, retired leadership. Jan, please stand.
Thanks, Joe and John, and congratulations to Jared and Jan. Hey, I got that. All right, next we're going to move to our main program. Now, as you likely know, Lisa Bridge, CEO of Ben Bridge Jeweler, was originally scheduled to speak today. After becoming sick, we had to bring in our star closer. See what I did there? Earlier than anticipated. I've had the privilege of working with Catie, who is Seattle Mariners President of Business Operations since she arrived in the Emerald City. And I can tell you, she is a force. She's the first female to serve in this lead role at the Mariners and one of only 2 in this position with the Major League Baseball. Catie not only dreams big, but she also puts in the work to deliver on them. Today, we're going to hear a conversation between Catie and Mark Wright. Now, Mark, after 35 years in broadcast news, his new career is in podcasting. He and a team at Work P2P are about to launch a new podcast dedicated to helping fix what's broken in the American workplace. The podcast is called Beats Working, Winning the Game of Work, and it comes out later this month. So please welcome to the stage club member Mark Wright and Catie Griggs.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. And I think we need to start out this interview by just saying, how about those Mariners? I thought about really grilling Catie, like saying, come on, you guys, every year promise that the team is going to be rebuilding and we'll be better next year. And we heard that for years and years and years, but I feel like a dream has come true, Catie.
There's more to come. There's more to come.
Let me know if you need some water too. We can bring some up. So Catie, it's great to have you here. I want to know, first of all, how does an international relations major turn her passion for sports into one of the most high profile sports leadership positions in the country?
In a very convoluted path. I started out, as most presidents do, as a strategy consultant in New York City. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wasn't the kid who knew day one, my life goal was to be the president of a Major League Baseball team. And frankly, if I had, I don't know that I'd be here. I've had the opportunity to have a lot of different roles, but the evolution was mostly curiosity, learning, and relationships. As my career has advanced, I've had the opportunity to hold roles from HR to IT, to finance, to marketing, to strategy, to sales. And it really is something where each has been driven by who am I working with, who am I working for, and what am I learning? And ultimately, when you get a phone call, seeing if you'd like a job like becoming the president of business operations for the Seattle Mariners, needless to say, that was a pretty quick conversation.
Wow, that's awesome. So you have an MBA from Dartmouth. And what I find really interesting is you spent 4 years prior to this role with Atlanta United, MLS franchise in Atlanta. And I watched the season opener last weekend. 65,000 people were at that game in the brand new Mercedes-Benz Stadium there. They have a guy on the team who won the World Cup with Venezuela. That franchise is on fire, and it makes me think that you had something to do with that. So talk about your role there and what was the strategy to building Atlanta United?
Yeah, so I had the privilege of joining Atlanta United a couple months into their inaugural season. So I'm not going to take credit for a lot of the work that happened on the brand launch side. But ultimately it came down to a really myopic focus on the fans and the experience that our fans had and how do we build a connection. And an advantage we have with baseball that perhaps wasn't the case with soccer, at least in Atlanta at that point in time, was baseball has such history, right? Most people, whether you're a fan or not, you're familiar with it. And with soccer, for a lot of folks, that was a sport that they didn't grow up playing. They didn't have a team that they cheered for. And it really was about how did we build a connection? And the focus from our standpoint was to really allow those who cared deeply about the game to be our biggest brand advocates, right? And how do we reach out to others and make it an experience where whether or not you're someone who knew everything about what's happening or absolutely nothing, you could find something that resonated. And I think with baseball, we have an opportunity to learn from that and recognize that some people are diehard, lifelong baseball fans who want to be keeping score throughout the entire game. And that's awesome. Some people want to have a drink in the pen. That's cool too. right? And so it really is about how do you find a way to authentically engage people, whether they're new fans or longtime fans, but ultimately, how do you use sports as a galvanizing and identifying force in our entire community?
That's great. So you are the president of business operations for the M's. And as Beth mentioned, you're the first woman ever to serve in that position and one of 2 women in the entire league to serve in that role. What is it like being on the front end of a transformation in professional sports in America? What's that like?
It's funny because it's the only spot I've ever been in. So I can't really have a great answer for that. I've been incredibly fortunate to work with a variety of individuals who have never made me feel like I was unusual. I believe deeply that diversity is a valuable asset for an organization, not just because it's the right thing, though it is the right thing, but because it reflects our audience, it reflects our fan base. And the reality is each one of us looks at the world through a lens shaped by our own experiences. Everyone has blind spots. And so to the extent that you can find people who look at the world differently, we'll be better. And I've been very, very fortunate to have people who allow me to be me. Beth has gotten to know me. I can be a lot, but they've allowed me to be me. And that allows sort of us, hopefully, to authentically connect with more members of our community, leveraging the insight I can bring to the table and combining that with insights and perspectives of folks who've been in the industry for a very long time.
Did anyone ever treat you differently because you're a woman, and how did you handle it?
I may just be oblivious. No, I think
Sort of, it's like their problem, not yours.
I was gonna say, I'm here to do a job. That's always been my perspective, is I don't waste a lot of time worrying about what other people think. I try to do the best work I can do. I build strong relationships with men and with women and with people who are more senior than I am and more junior than I am and sitting next to me on an airplane. So it really is something where I think from my standpoint, if there's someone where I don't feel comfortable or someone where I'm not getting the traction I need, I just go down a different path and figure out how to get it done.
So help us understand your role. You're president of business operations. Jerry DePoto is the president of baseball operations. So as I understand it, most of the top management report to you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think about it is if it's our athletes. So anything from our scouting and talent identification to our high performance training, our coaching staff, our minor league athletes, our major league athletes, all of that reports up through Jerry and Justin and their organization on baseball operations. Anything, whether it's the ballpark operations to the marketing, to the broadcast, to security, to construction, HR, and all of the other various facets of business that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, all of that's on my side. So ultimately it's the athletes are in Jerry's, the other side's on mine, but ultimately we have to work in hand because as you mentioned, we've asked y'all to be patient for a bit. I appreciate it. Last year was a lot of fun. There's more fun to be had ahead of us, but we got to work together.
So you said at Atlanta, you were laser focused on the fan experience, and you've said that about your role here in Seattle. What does that look like just from a practical standpoint when you focus on the fan experience? Because I told you on the phone yesterday, I'm that guy who can go to Safeco Field, or sorry, T-Mobile Park. And sorry, that's important, isn't it? hope no one from T-Mobile's here. But I literally am that guy who can sit in the stands and I don't care who wins. I have good food and the sun is shining and I'm at a baseball game in a beautiful baseball park in Seattle, Washington. So maybe I'm not the ideal fan, but
That sounds pretty ideal to me, actually.
yeah.
That sounds pretty easy.
So the fan experience, take us through that. What are you trying to fix or improve with the fan experience here?
I think it's ultimately about recognizing that, one of the things that's unique about being a baseball team is when you look at the supply and demand curve, we have plenty of supply. I have about 47,000 seats to 81 regular season home games. That means we have the opportunity and the privilege of welcoming in a really broad base of men, women, and children into our ballpark each year. So when we're looking at that, it's how do we continue to grow? How do we recognize that there's tremendous value in providing an experience to people who, as I mentioned, can just happily be sitting in the sunshine, eating great food, watching a baseball game, but also welcoming in others, helping people have those different experiences. I get asked a lot, what I like to do or where I like to sit or be at the ballpark, the real answer is I don't sit. But with that being said, I think that one of the things we're moving away from is the sort of demographic driven sort of archetypes. I am a 40-year-old mother of 2. I like different things. When I'm with my kids, I like being on 300. I'm near Dippin' Dots. If they want to run around, they can, and they can see the whole ballpark. It's awesome. When I bring a girlfriend, kind of like you, I want to be in the left field bleachers, drinking beer, eating good food, and being in the sun. If I'm bringing guests from out of town, section 318 has the best view of the Seattle skyline of anywhere in the entire ballpark. And if I'm hosting business guests, I want to be in the Diamond Club, right? I'm me in every single one of those scenarios. So if we were looking at me as in, this is what a 40-year-old female mother of 2 wants, you'd miss the boat, right? So it's how do we create those different experiences? And then once we've created them, how do we intentionally communicate them to ensure that anyone who comes to our ballpark can find the right experience for them? Because that's what's going to help you want to come back. So that's what we're focusing on. And then around the corner is little things like, I've heard rumors that people don't like waiting in concession lines. I don't know where that comes from, but it's how do we actually leverage technology to allow us to serve our fans more efficiently and effectively and get them back in the seats and watching baseball games, right? That's something where we started and we rolled out 1 store down on the 100 level last year. We'll be rolling out several more going into this season, but it really is just a continuous evaluation and evolution, literally game by game, homestand by homestand of how do we find the things that we could do better and take action.
I love that because I don't know about you, but I get back to my seat and my kids will say, oh, you missed the best play. I'm like, here's your nachos. So I'm with that. Major League Baseball is you're trying to speed up concession lines. Major League Baseball is trying to speed up the games. So baseball is a game that doesn't change very much. I read last night that the last major rules change came in 1893 when the distance from the pitcher mound went from 50 to 60.5 feet. Can you imagine Nolan Ryan 50 feet away from you, throwing 104 miles an hour? But this year a pitch clock is being instituted to speed up the game. 15 seconds is the clock if nobody's on base, I think, and 20 seconds if there are people on base. So tell me what impact that's going to have, and is that a good thing for the game?
I think so. So keep in mind what you've seen so far in spring training. I was down there last week and I'll fly back tomorrow. The first 2 games that we had, the first one was done in 2 hours, 29 minutes, the second one in 2:16. What that means is with our new 6:40 p.m. start times, you could be done by 9. That's a game changer. Truly a game changer especially when you're looking at, like I said, 81 opportunities over the course of the year. We're not getting rid of any of the play. There are still, I assure you, 3 outs each time. All of the batters will be out there. But in addition to the pitch clock, there also are a few other pretty exciting things that are going on. They've banned the shift, which means you should see a little bit more action in terms of getting hits. You've seen batting averages drop significantly. It's fun to watch the guys play. We've got such incredibly talented pitchers. We've got such incredibly talented athletes in the field. This is something where you should see a little bit more action. Similarly, the bases have actually expanded in size slightly, which you may think, who cares? 2 things. One, it's dramatically safer for our athletes because they're much less likely to run into each other. It decreases the injury from the player standpoint, but it also means that you're just a little bit closer when you're trying to steal a base. And when you're looking at all of the times where you're keeping an eye on the ump at first base and is he going to call the guy safe or out, the milliseconds matter. So that's something that's happening. The other big change that's coming into play this year is we're playing a balanced schedule for the first time. And what that means is every team in Major League Baseball will now play each of the other 29 teams every season. So there's previously, you may or may not have seen your second favorite team, because I know all of you are Mariners fans, your second favorite team play us each year. This year you will. And so it's something where, again, I think the game is evolving. We've heard loud and clear from our fans that they're looking to maintain the things that make baseball special, respect the heritage and the history of the game, but also looking at ways in which realistically, if you're looking at game times, we're back to about 1979. So the games, believe it or not, back in 79 were in that 220 type range. And so that's where we're trying to get back to. It's not about changing the games. If anything, it's back to the future.
So from today through New Year's Day of next year, huge things are coming to T-Mobile Park. We've got the All-Star game coming in July, And we have NHL's, is it called the Winter Classic?
Winter Classic.
Winter Classic is coming on New Year's Day. Those are two huge events. They're going to be playing hockey in a baseball stadium. How are you getting ready for both of those huge events?
It's a lot of work. No, really, it's an opportunity for us to showcase what we believe to be the best ballpark in baseball to a much broader audience. And so for All-Star, we've been working with Major League Baseball for almost a year and a half already on this event. And Beth and her team at the Seattle Sports Commission have been working with us hand in hand, because this is not just about what happened at T-Mobile Park. It's not just about the game itself, which will be on Tuesday, July 11th. It's not just about the Home Run Derby, which will be on Monday, July 10th. This is a week-long celebration of the Pacific Northwest baseball and softball. And so we're really working very hard to ensure that there's an opportunity to showcase the different organizations inside our city and really make this a place that all of us can feel proud to show off. So it's a fair amount of work, but it really is about working hand in hand with our league partners and with the NHL Winter Classic, obviously working hand in hand with our friends at the Kraken as well.
That's amazing. I'm always amazed at how many different kinds of events come to T-Mobile Park. We've got concerts and the winter Christmas lights, and which I'm sure the groundskeeper hates because we all trample the grass.
He hates hockey more.
Yeah, that ice is going to be heavy. But when you look at, I mean, that's a pretty interesting business model. It's just not even close to just baseball, is it?
No, I mean, but we look at it as it's a public institution, right? This is a way in which we can serve our community. During the course of the baseball season, we're pretty busy with baseball games. But in just a couple of weeks, actually, believe it or not, before the baseball season kicks off for the Mariners, we're hosting high school baseball teams coming and playing at the ballpark. So we have an opportunity to serve our community and welcome in folks. It's pretty fun and pretty special experience for them. We had Topgolf in. Folks could actually come and hit golf balls last winter. To your point, we've had Christmas, we have lots of concerts. It really is, how do we help T-Mobile be a place where our community can come together? And frequency, they're coming together most frequently around baseball, but we have an opportunity to give back and bring more people in, recognizing that our community needs more than just baseball. And we have an opportunity to provide that.
I know that Jerry's on the baseball side, but I'm sure that you have an opinion about what I'm about to talk about. One of my sons is 19 years old, and he told me for years, Dad, the Mariners haven't been to the playoffs since I've been alive. And he would just get very dramatic about it. But now we did, we went to the playoffs last year. I just want to know what changed in the last couple of years that brought us to this point, because for the first time in a long time, we have real pitching. We've got amazing pitching. We've got the Rookie of the Year. We've got amazing defense as well. So how did that align? I mean, is part of it luck, or is it all strategy? And how did we get here?
No, I think, look, anytime you're talking about sports, there's a portion of it that's luck, because the reality is they are not baseball robots. Contrary to popular opinion, they're men. And most of them are really young, which means that, you sleep funny, you wake up, your back hurts, you get in a fight with your girlfriend, you play worse the next day, you get injured because it's a long season. Things happen. And there's a lot of things that happen outside of your control. And our opportunity is to try to put all of the pieces in place so we are able to weather all of the things that will happen over the course of the season the best we can. With that being said, going back to what I said earlier about being patient, I know y'all stepped through and had to go through yet another rebuild over the last few years. It was intentional. It was about getting us in a situation where we could really shore up our farm system, have incredible young talent like Cal Raleigh, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, this little guy named Julio Rodriguez come through the system and be in a position to do what they do. And we're in a really good place right now. We've shored up our really young roster who's playing incredibly well with some veterans. Robbie Ray was a reigning Cy Young winner when he came in last year. Luis Castillo, who we signed to a long-term deal of keeping him off of the free agent market, is just an absolute stud on the mound. We have Teoscar Hernandez coming in this year, Colton Wong. It really is not only a talented lineup, but it's also a lineup that's really good guys. There's really good chemistry in the clubhouse. Scott does a really fantastic job of building a sense of accountability. One of my favorite things he says that I've actually told him completely stolen, and I'm using it for the front office as well, is his motto is, doesn't matter, get better. That's it. You go out, you play the best game of your life. That's awesome. The next day you're playing again. How do you get a little bit better? You go out, you stink it up. All right. Tomorrow's a new day. Doesn't matter. How do you get better? And I think that mentality, the guys have bought into it. They bought into that. They bought into each sort of the dynamics and the sort of accountability, but also the relationships they have with each other. If you watched any of our games last year, you saw them screwing around all the time. I think there were some interviews where they're literally throwing gum at people's heads as they were trying to do interviews on air, screwing, but they're just having fun. And ultimately, that's what our game's all about, is how do we have fun? And I think they've played a lot better as a result. So we're looking forward to building on that.
I think sometimes we forget it's a game, right? I called Kevin Martinez yesterday. He's a friend who's the VP of Marketing Communications. And he just got back from Arizona, and he said, Mark, I have to tell you these guys love each other and they are just good human beings. And he said, it's so much fun to be in the clubhouse with these guys. Before we go to questions from the audience, because I know that you all have questions, I just wanted to acknowledge you and also Beth for playing, really key leadership roles in sports in Seattle. As I hope all of you know, Beth was the committee, co-committee chair for the 2026 World Cup. The fact that the World Cup is coming here is because of Beth and others. So I just wanted to acknowledge both of you and thank you for your leadership. This is really fun to have you in such an inspiring role. All right, let's go to some questions. Ken Calling is going to be our, you're up, Ken.
I just wanted to ask you, how did you get to know all about baseball before you took a job in baseball? Or did you?
No, it's a fair question. I love the sport of baseball. I played Little League as a kid with the boys. The Durham Bulls were my team growing up in Raleigh, North Carolina. It keeps me out of trouble to stay with the Durham Bulls. But no, baseball's always been a game I've been a fan of, that I've played. And so it really was a privilege to be able to get back to it.
Jeff Borek, thanks for being here. If stadiums are sports cars, you own a convertible. Is there something you can share about what you've learned about that unique aspect of the stadium that has benefited the Mariners?
No, it's a great question. And it's somewhat ironic because I came from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is also a building that has a retractable roof. And so I've gotten to know some of the nuances of what that means. And it's a huge asset. So one of the things that's interesting about the Seattle Mariners that some of you may not be aware of is when you look at the footprints that clubs are provided, and that's our look, basically where we can market, where our television is shown through our regional sports networks and the like, it's generally based on a somewhat restricted geography, often mileage based. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, I don't know if you've noticed, there aren't a lot of other baseball teams. So we have the privilege of serving a territory that includes all of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, and shared territory of Hawaii. And what that means is when we have fans traveling in significant distances often to come take part in our games. If you're traveling in, you really don't want it to be rained out. Right. And so it's something where it actually gives us the opportunity to have a level of continuity and be able to assure our guests, whether they're coming in from here in Capitol Hill or whether they're traveling in from Bozeman, to know that if they come to T-Mobile Park for a Mariners game, they'll get to watch a Mariners game. So it's a huge asset for us. And frankly, it's part of the reason that we were able to land the Winter Classic this year as well, is because it provided them with the assurity that they could be able to play rain, wind, sleet, shine.
Hey, Catie, thanks for being here. I'm from Toronto originally, and when the Jays are in town, this seems like a second home game for the Jays. So just wondering how the organization looks at that, if there's any thoughts around that rivalry.
Yeah, I'm going to be real honest. I hate it. Although I don't know if you were there last year. We had a really good series against the Jays when they were in town last summer. And by the time you got to Saturday and Sunday, it actually felt like an M's game, which was awesome. My least favorite thing is wandering the halls of the ballpark and not knowing what happened based on who's cheering. So I think, look, on the one hand, we want T-Mobile Park to be a place that is welcoming to everyone. Everyone should feel safe. Everyone should feel respected. Everyone should have an amazing time. And yes, that includes Blue Jays fans. With that being said, I am very, very optimistic and very hopeful that we can provide our Mariners fans with reason to build off of the momentum from last year and take back our park, because that's a lot more fun.
Quick question from the Zoom. Tell us what is on tap for reducing the lines utilizing technology along the lines of Climate Pledge, like what they do.
No, so last year, so Climate Pledge has a variety of different ways, whether it's self-checkout or the Amazon walk-off technology. We rolled out one location in conjunction with Amazon last year, where it really is you just swipe your credit card or use your Amazon One Palm reader to go in. You can pick up whatever you want and then you can leave. It's the exact same thing. We're going to be scaling that up and putting them in more parts of the ballpark going into this season, recognizing that it really does do a number in terms of changing the timeout. I think our average shopping time was less than 3 minutes, with some people in and out in less than 30 seconds. So if you're looking to get beer, soda, hot dog, and back to your seats, that's what we're doing. And we'll be doing a lot more of it in the years to come.
All right, final question.
Final question. Thank you for coming. My daughter's about to graduate from Gonzaga with a sports management degree. What advice would you give to young women trying to get into the sports industry?
Yeah, I think it's about relationship building, right? It's what I will tell you is a lot of people think they want to work in sports. And I use the phrase think they want to work in sports. I think a lot of people don't know what it means. There are a lot of incredible things that we have the privilege to do. It's long days, long nights, it's weekends. And sometimes there's value in having the thing that you love be separate from the thing that you're paid to do. With that being said, there are a lot of people who apply, especially for entry-level roles. Build relationships, because it's hard to stand out in a pile of resumes, particularly for those entry-level roles. So the more they're able to reach out, have informational interviews, get to know people, and build a story as to why you would be the right person for that job, like that's what helps get you over the hill. You might be able to get in cold, but it's a lot easier if you can get in warm.
Okay, 30-second question. 30-second answer. Sorry. How will you measure whether you've been successful at your job?
I'll look at this room and ask y'all to tell me. That's it. It's looking at our fans. We do surveys after every single game. I look at the results after every single game, and our goal is to get better, right? The highlight probably of my professional career, 6 hours and 22 minutes of folks standing and screaming as we played the Astros was pretty awesome. Watching Cal hit the bomb to walk it off and get us into the postseason, and watching the entire ballpark lose its mind had to be a highlight. And it's because it's something special that's bigger than sports. It's a place where we have the opportunity to come together over a shared passion versus looking at each other and trying to figure out what's different about us and what are the things we're going to fight about. Having the opportunity to truly elevate the mood of an entire community, that's success. And that's what we're looking to do more of.
Catie Griggs, thank you.
Thank you, Catie. I appreciate you sharing some inside baseball for us today. Sorry, couldn't help it. But not to mention that also the excitement for the year ahead, All-Star Game and Winter Classic is going to be a lot of fun to work on with you. So Catie, as a thank you for your time today, we have made a donation to Harvest Against Hunger by giving 600 servings of healthy produce in your name. So thank you for that. The Ken and Ken Show, thank you for fielding questions from our members. Our club greatly benefits from our sponsorship from several members, and I'd like to express my gratitude to longtime Rotary supporter Bob Alexander and Joel Farrell with Morgan Stanley, Dominic Musafia, Seattle Divorce Options, Jacobson Jarvis Certified Public Accountants, Matt Bratland from Net Tech Pro Bono IT Services, and our tech support Live Oak AV. Thank you for that. Now, to close out our program, we have just a few announcements from our co-VP of membership, John Steckler, to share membership engagement. And then Ken, our Prince of Programs, will share the rest of the amazing speakers that we have in the coming week. John.
Okay, just a few quick announcements for you. First of all, next slide. I want to remind everybody about Fedbed Dickman's special dinner, her Lebanese dinner that's going to be happening on March 22nd at 6 p.m. I think a bunch of you have already gotten invitations from her via email, but please sign up for that. It's always a sellout deal, always a great opportunity to have a guided tour take you through that wonderful exotic dinner. Next one. The Young Rotary Leaders, I think I mentioned this last week, they are having their next event, and they've decided the best way to pull a bunch of Rotarians together is put them in an escape room and let them have to count on each other in order to get out of there. That's going to be at Hourglass Escapes. That's going to be on March 22nd at 5 p.m. There's information in the totem. Next slide. Okay, C4 has decided, our young Rotary members have decided to bring in their next event, and they've decided to do it on March 23rd. And guess what? They're going to celebrate March Madness with a happy hour at the Yard House at 4:30. Existing Rotarians, old Rotarians like myself are more than welcome to attend, along with younger ones. It's a great way to bring the young and old Rotarians together. And last up, we want to put a special shout out to UNCF. United Negro College Fund is having their gala on March 25th, 6 p.m. at the Hyatt Regency downtown. You can email, as you can see here, Linda Thompson will give you all the information, but there's been a great relationship between Seattle 4 and UNCF over the years. And so we'd like to support them in their gala. So some great events coming up to create some camaraderie. Okay. And here he comes, the Prince of Programs. He's going to start talking. I'm never listening.
I learned a lot today. Thank you so much. I'm one of those fans that would be in this back looking for like a Pinot Gris. And if you think you've got a problem, I grew up with cricket. It's 4 days over 5 days. So whatever you're going to do with the clock, you need to sell to the Australians, because 4 days, I know they've shortened it, because I remember when I was a kid, I went to one of these, they call test matches, right? I go to this thing, I'm like one of 17 people in a place that holds about 100,000. I'm like, well, crickets. All right, so coming up, you heard, and we kicked off our month of celebrating women today. Thank you, Catie, because she didn't know she was really doing this today, 2 days ago. Thank you, Mark, for pivoting. And speaking of amazing women, congratulations, Jan. Next week, Lisa Bridge, celebrating 110 years. Looks pretty good. Colleen Brown after that. Why women on boards is so amazingly influential. You probably already knew that. Maybe some of you knew that. This is going to be really cool. And then our very own Dorothy Bullitt will be back with us. Speaking of amazing generations, 4 generations of 130 years worth of female leadership in Seattle. Beth, Catie, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ken. All right, so Catie, what I typically do at the end of these meetings is share a few sports highlights just to keep everybody up to date. And Catie was with me last night, as were a couple other folks who are here. We had the Sports Star of the Year award show last night. This is Washington's biggest night out in sports. And this was the 88th annual event. So I wanted to share a few highlights. We had 3 public vote categories with so many outstanding nominees in each one that you wondered, how can you possibly choose just one winner? But the winner for Sports Star in women's sports was Rose Lavelle, excuse me, midfielder for the OL Reign and National Women's Soccer League. For men's sports, it was none other than the Mariners phenom player Julio Rodriguez. And also, no surprise, sports story of the year. Can anybody guess for 2022? Mariners. And they're ending the 20-year postseason drought. So we also recognize sports broadcaster Jay Mueller with the Media Excellence Award, Seahawks legend Doug Baldwin with the Humanitarian Award, and none other than Ken Griffey Jr. as our sports legend honoree. Now, last Sunday, the Sounders won their season opener, dominating Colorado at home 4-0. That was a great game. The Seahawks are in Indiana for the annual NFL Scouting Combine. Kraken won last night, beating the St. Louis Blues. And recently, I saw a video of a women's track event where one of the runners fell shortly after the race started. By the time she got up, she was 20 meters behind the whole pack. Through sheer force of will, she steadily caught up to the pack and then went on to actually win the race. The story was a great example of a quote by Serena Williams that I wanted to leave you with today. She says, "I really think a champion is defined not by their wins, but how they recover when they fail." We are adjourned.